4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City. A fusion of politics, commentary, entertainment, and sports. Steve and his team bring you the latest news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
Hi, folks. Breaking news. Reuters is reporting that the wreckage of that the Air Algiers jetliner that went down today has been found. We'll give you more details as they become available, but apparently the wreckage has been found. It went missing earlier today, and it was off the radar. It was went down over Mali, apparently, and we'll bring you more details as they become available. All right. You might have heard by now that some 15 to 18 Palestinians killed in a shelter, a UN shelter in the Gaza Strip. Interesting, the news coverage. I got to tell you, I've been watching CNN all day, and even as of a few minutes ago, they're reporting that nobody knows for sure if it was an Israeli rocket that hit that shelter, or a Hamas rocket or piece of munition that hit that shelter. So they've been very fair with their coverage. The UN itself doesn't know who hit that shelter. Yet, Yahoo News, CBS, USA Today, Israel did it, Israel did it, Israel did it. When on the other hand, NBC, CNN, and the New York Times, to be fair, are all saying that the shelter was hit, and there are still questions out there as to who did it. But how quick they are. Of course, Al Jazeera leading the charge there, also saying Israel did it in their headlines and stories. NBC, CNN, New York Times telling you the truth. Governor Bill Richardson will join us, but first, let's watch this and we'll talk about it.
Well, he's very crafty. He's a former KGB agent. I met him once in the Clinton administration when he first came in. I don't think he has the edge, but he's clearly been very unhelpful to the United States on Iran. He's been unhelpful on the Syria issue. He's been with President Obama. They don't have good chemistry.
All right, there you go. Bill Richardson talking about Vladimir Putin and his relationship with Barack Obama, and the former governor of the state of New Mexico, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, former secretary of the Department of Energy. I don't know, Governor, I don't know how you get all that on a business card, but I'd like to see it one day. Welcome aboard, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Nice to be with you.
Well, thank you. All right, let's start with Putin, and let's start with where you believe we are in the wake of the shooting down of the airliner. Obviously, Putin didn't say, hey, guys, cool it, because yesterday they shot down 2 more, albeit Ukrainian fighter planes, or so they claim. So, I mean, he's not intimidated by any of this, is he?
No, he's not intimidated, but I believe if the European Union put some sanctions on Russian banks, a potential arms embargo, and then finally some technology restrictions on their energy exports, I think Russia finally is going to listen. There's going to be a huge cost to Russia, public opinion-wise. They may be dragged through several international courts. But I am not one of those that say that Putin is just totally thumbing his nose. The Russian economy is not in good shape. A lot of trade has been lost. A lot of commercial relationships with several European countries could be in jeopardy. There's a potential recession. But I think if the European Union puts some sanctions on state-owned Russian banks so that preventing European investment in Russia's debt and other Russian efforts, I think is going to be significant for the first time. And I think finally a lot of European countries have had it with Putin. The issue is going to be how strong are the sanctions, how long do they last, and what will Germany do? Because Germany is the key. If Germany backs off a bit, it's not going to happen.
No, right. But you look at the relationship. I hope you're right. I hope they finally had enough. But up to this point, Governor, look at the deals that Russia has with these countries. Look at France selling all these weapons to Russia. And right on down the line, they have not been serious about this.
That is right. There's 28 countries that heavily depend on Russia for natural gas, for a lot of their commercial trade. For instance, France, you mentioned, the helicopter deal that the French are selling to Russia. That's clear. That's going to go through. So this arms embargo, if there is one by the European Union, the 28 countries, it would be prospective for the future. So again, that's what's hurt a bit in the effort to rein in. The United States has put forth sanctions, but when the Europeans don't follow up and they just put sanctions on individual people rather than on Russian companies or sector by sector, it's not going to have much bite.
All right, let's move over to John Kerry in the Middle East and the efforts for a ceasefire. A lot of tension. First of all, was the FAA smart to institute that ban on flights to Tel Aviv? And if they felt it was necessary, why is it gone 2 days later? That did nothing but inflame Israel. Many thought it was a political move.
Well, I'm a very strong supporter of Israel. I don't know the circumstances, but if there's safety, I mean, they were bombing 1 mile away from the airport, from Ben Gurion Airport. The FAA has to be concerned about safety. I'm glad that they took the ban off. I don't think it was a political move. I think the United States is very strongly committed to Israel. I mean, we have done everything we can in terms of the diplomacy to recognize Israel's right to defend itself. There's concern over some of the civilian targets, but at the same time, I think Israel has responded to ceasefire requests 3 times by the Egyptians. I think Hamas needs to step up. But again, I think American diplomacy here is crucial. We need Qatar to step up. They control a lot of Hamas's money. I don't think Turkey's going to be a player. They're too pro-Hamas. But Egypt has really stepped up as a potential mediator proposing this ceasefire. That's a very favorable development.
Yeah, but of course Egypt
reducing tension.
Right, but Egypt is no fan of Hamas anymore. The Muslim Brotherhood, when they were in place, were. But this government certainly is not. And let me ask you, there's been deafening silence, really, from the Arab League, from the Arab neighbors of Israel with regard to what's going on. In fact, most of the criticism has come from the international community, Human Rights Watch, and even the United States, which just the other day said, Israel, we, as you said, we defend their right to defend themselves, but, there's always the but. But the Arab countries, I think they'd like to see Israel take Hamas out.
Well, the head of the Arab League is an Egyptian, Nabil al-Arabi. I think they're taking their cue from Egypt and the ceasefire mediation effort. There is no question there's been a deafening silence. That always happens when a flare-up like this occurs. But what I see happening is some constructive players taking a more active role. For instance, the Secretary General of the UN, although I don't agree with a lot of the human rights reports on Israel that have been made, I think it's good that he's in there with some kind of commitment towards a ceasefire. European Union is there. France foreign minister is there. But I think the key players, Steve, are going to be what does Qatar do? They fund a lot of what Hamas is operating. Their headquarters are in Qatar. Does Egypt put forth another ceasefire proposal? I know they don't get along with Hamas, but they're very strong with the Palestinian, the moderate Palestinian with Abbas, who's playing a constructive role. So again, I see the possibility of a ceasefire, not right away, but in the next few days. And I think Secretary Kerry, he knows the region. He's invested a lot in that Israeli-Palestinian peace effort. I know it didn't work, But I think personal relationships are very important, and he has those there. So hopefully something glimmer of hope will come in the next few days.
Let me ask you about another situation, Governor, and that's the persecution of Christians in Mosul, for instance, the most recent, what they're calling a genocide, where these Christians are told to convert at the threat of death or pay a tax, or they're running. They're running for their lives. They're being slaughtered. They're being massacred. And this is going on all over the Middle East. When you look at the number of Christians that has dwindled down over the years, and in parts of Africa, why is the world basically silent on this issue, do you think?
Well, again, I'd like the UN Human Rights Council to look into that instead of making statements just about Israel in this recent escalation.
And why do you think they don't, sir? Why do you think they don't?
Well, look, I was UN ambassador. I used to fight votes 180 to 3 against Israel on a lot of these human rights issues. Look, I think what needs to happen is a real balanced approach that we look at human rights violations across the board. And this is a terrible persecution. There should be some instance of threats of war crimes. But again, the U.S., we can lead, but we need our European friends, and our European friends sometimes step up, other times they don't step up.
No, I agree, but shouldn't we hear from our president, a devout Christian? Shouldn't we hear from him, even if he weren't? I mean, I'm Jewish. Shouldn't we hear from him about this genocide of Christians all over the world?
Well, I think he has said something, but look, there's no question we need to step up these efforts. We have a human rights component at the State Department. I'd like to see a lot more there. There's no question about it. But Steve, right now we've got the Syrian crisis, the Iraqi crisis, the Ukraine crisis,
I know,
the Middle East.
I know.
We're a little. I won't say preoccupied. That doesn't mean you don't pay attention to what you referred to, but the nonstop national security crises are everywhere, and that has to be a major priority.
Governor, thank you so very much. I really appreciate your time. I hope you'll come back, sir.
Thank you, Steve. All the best.
Bye-bye. Governor Bill Richardson, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. And when we come back, you're going to get much more of what you love. And that's the Steve Malzberg Show right here and only on Newsmax Television. Don't go away.